Hi, welcome to the Beacon Hill Report with Senator Joan Lovely. I'm your host, Walt Kosmowski. Senator Lovely, how great to have you in the studio.
Great to be back, Walt. Thank you.
It's been a while. This COVID thing has turned our lives topsy-turvy, hasn't it?
That's for sure.
Yeah, so we're back in the saddle again.
We are.
Thank you for coming in. We have a lot of things that we could potentially talk about, and I think what we're going to do maybe is tell our audience that we'll probably tape 2 or 3 shows in the next several weeks to cover all the topics that we should. But
Great.
But today I'd like to concentrate on something that's been in the news, a big item in the news that's just very controversial, and that is the recent Supreme Court ruling on Roe versus Wade. And we're going to talk about that. So as a start, let me just say that for our viewers, Roe versus Wade was a decision in 1973 that the Supreme Court enacted, which said that there was a constitutional right for folks to privacy and, i.e., to have an abortion. And that's been the law of the land since, until this past June, right? June 24th of 2022, the Supreme Court overturned that and nullified that, and said that there is not a constitutional right to an abortion. The case was actually Dobbs versus the Jackson Women's Health Group, right? That was the official case that it was decided on. And I know that you've been on the show many times. Our viewers are aware that you have really been an advocate of women's rights, of legislation that benefits the family unit, et cetera. That that's really your strong point. What was, I guess, your first reaction? I guess you knew it was coming. I guess because you had done some things beforehand. But what was your reaction to this decision by the Supreme Court?
Shocked that we could, after this law being in place for almost 50 years, that it would be overturned. Women are second class, I feel like, and a lot of women I've spoken to feel like second class citizens, that our rights don't matter. This is about choice and, like you said, about privacy. And to see the Supreme Court do this, we in the legislature kind of saw the writing on the wall. So 2 years ago, in the last session, we codified Roe in this state. And what we did was we said, after 24 weeks, a woman is entitled, or a birthing individual is entitled to abortion care up to 24 weeks. After 24 weeks, it would be for a fatal fetal anomaly of the fetus, which means the fetus could not survive outside the womb. We also put some other protections in place. If you're a minor, you would have to go to and you don't have your parents' permission, you'd have to go to court. We modified that as well, so that minors did not have to go to court to receive judicial permission. And we thought that these were good protections put in place.
And this was 2 years ago,
2 years
right?
ago.
2 years ago, right.
2 years ago, yes. And I want to credit my dear colleague, Senate President Emerita Harriet Chandler from Worcester. She's actually retiring this year at the age of 84.
Wow.
She is remarkable, a mentor, and she has led us in the Senate, one of the strongest women in the Senate. She led this bill.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Wonderful.
And
now, what happened? There was another bill that was just signed by the governor this past July. Did that modify?
It did. It strengthened it.
Okay.
So we've learned over the last 2 years, and I'll give you an example. There was a couple who were expecting a much-wanted baby. In the between the 7th and 8th month, a boy, the fetus suffered a catastrophic stroke in utero.
Oh, wow.
He was not going to, if he was going to survive, they could not tell this couple if this fetus was going to survive. If he was going to survive, he would be in tremendous pain. Pain that they may not be able to relieve for him until he did pass away.
How tragic.
So his parents, and this was in the Boston Globe, his parents were she was a patient of Mass General, so they went to Mass General and said, we don't want to carry to term. Can you assist us? And the decision was no, because it wasn't it was going to be fatal at some point, but he might survive outside the womb for minutes, hours.
So there was a little question mark.
They didn't know.
Yeah.
So they went to another state to receive medication that would end the pregnancy, and then they came back here and they delivered this much-wanted son who was stillborn. And they got to spend some time with him before they buried him, but he was just not going to live or not live long. And they did not want to put him through the pain that they were advised was going to happen. So we have changed the row, but a couple weeks ago or within the last month when we redid it, the governor signed it on July 29th. We put in the word grave or lethal fetal anomaly to include the very rare instance of this couple and this pregnancy. So another couple who may want to be able to seek abortion care because they have this grave diagnosis would be able to do that with their medical provider.
Right. So in this way, you have foreseen circumstances that then people could take advantage of the law and say, we'd like to do this and we can do this because of the way you've revamped the law, sort of.
Most abortion care is like the morning after pill.
Yeah.
Where that just interrupts the conception process. So there isn't, that's the majority of the care. Then there is the actual procedure, and then in the very rare instance of this story that I just told you.
Right. Now, just a statistic here that I came up with, I researched, I didn't make it up. Right now, 68% of the population, the United States population, agree that abortion should remain legal, despite what the Supreme Court has said. Now, can you comment on the fact that there apparently are a number of states, 20-something, close to 30 states, who, soon as that decision was made, put laws into effect banning abortion. In fact, they call these the trigger laws. So they had them all queued up, ready to go in case the Supreme Court made this decision. Tell us a little bit about that.
So that's interesting because it's the legislature and the governor who are making these decisions on behalf of their constituents. But look at Kansas. Kansas, it went to the voters, and the voters decided. So are these legislatures representative of the people that they're representing? I don't know. I don't know the states as well as I know Massachusetts. We did it here in Massachusetts, but again, because it was overwhelmingly supported to be able to codify Roe. And we actually, in this law that we just passed and the governor signed in the last month, we're going to make sure that women, birthing individuals from other states need abortion care where it's banned in their state, that they can come here safely and receive that care. Texas passed a law that would criminalize someone from their state seeking abortion care in say, Massachusetts. And anybody could invoke it. The Uber driver who was driving this woman to the airport to get on a plane to come here could say, you know what, I know this is going to happen, and that's a crime, and we said no. You're not going to extradite or have any opportunity to be able to reach into our courts to be able to pull someone back, and the providers. We try to criminalize the providers that were providing care. We said no, you can't do that. So that's codified into this new law as well.
And there's some other things as well that we'll touch on a little bit later. Now, when you use the word codified, I just want to make sure our viewers understand what that means. It's written into the state code. In other words, it becomes a law. That's what codified means.
Correct.
So it's the law of the state of Massachusetts.
Right.
Now, 60% 70% 80% 90% 95% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% Now, in this instance, because Massachusetts, I can call it a safe haven if I can just use that term, right? So other people seeking abortions will be coming to states like Massachusetts and other states, for instance, that are as liberal in this respect as Massachusetts.
There's a handful, and I'm not going to be able to
Yeah.
come up with it, but yes, there are.
Yeah.
Although we're pretty out there.
Yeah.
We're very forward thinking.
Yeah, and I can see where you were mentioning how people, by coming to Massachusetts, they might be breaking their state laws, and then I can see where insurance companies, how do the insurance companies fit into this?
So we've mandated that insurance has to cover the procedure. We've mandated that there's a standing order in all pharmacies to issue, to dispense emergency contraception. Again, if you're taking that morning after pill, that is a much easier transition than going into a procedure or having some type of life-threatening, thing that happens to either the mother or the fetus, where you would have to be, again, like this story I told you. We also require that no deductibles, no co-insurance, no co-payments, no cost sharing, because abortion care should be accessible to all women of all factors
Right.
in their lives. And, we see in these other states that there'll be women in those other states who that won't be able to afford to get to, say, Massachusetts.
Yeah.
Can they drive here? Can they afford to fly here? And we're really afraid that it's going to go back to backroom abortions in these states for these women that just don't have the means
Yeah.
to get to another state.
Yeah, well, you might have people that can't even afford the travel costs, right?
Correct.
Or that they have to stay over at a motel or
Correct.
or things like that. Now, let me ask you, Senator, what does this do to the decades of progress on gender equality? Doesn't it put that at risk now? All these gains that have been made there. What does that do to that progress?
Well, here in Massachusetts, again, we have codified gender-affirming care. So we want to make sure that any individual seeking their health care here, reproductive care, abortion care, gender-affirming care, that they're going to be guaranteed to receive it. So this state, our state, is mandating that as well. I can't speak to other states, but we see this as this could be the beginning of a threat to all types of rights. Is marriage equality next? Is voting rights next? What is coming down the line from this?
Contraception
Next. We see all of these rights that are enshrined in our nation, in our states, in our people, being threatened, and of course, Roe v. Wade overturned.
Yeah. Now, there are some folks that make the case that abortion is something that should be decided by a family or a woman that, based upon medical needs, religious beliefs, that the government should get their hands. Why does the government tell you when you need a knee replacement, you can't have that knee replacement till you're 65? What do you say to that?
Well, I just read in the paper this morning about book banning, for example.
Yeah.
That there are other states and libraries and other communities in other states that are banning the books you can read.
Yeah.
That's a First Amendment
Yeah.
right. If
Yeah.
you don't want to read it, don't read it.
Yeah.
But don't tell someone else they can't read it.
Yeah.
And so for abortion care, it's about choice. It's someone's choice to be able to avail themselves to that care. How do you take that choice away?
Yeah.
We don't know. I can imagine everyone has a different circumstance going into making that decision with their spouse or loved one, family, and their medical provider.
Yeah. Yeah. And that also goes to, we're a nation that was founded on the separation of church and state. Obviously, because when the colonists came over, they've been persecuted for their faith, some of them, and they said we can't have that. We have to. So in this case, some of the laws, and I see this in some of the people who are running for office in other states, the so-called Bible Belt, and I'm not disrespecting anybody when I say that. I'm just stating an objective fact is that we're not a country that is based on one particular religion. We're supposed to be, and this plays into this as well, does it not?
I think it could, absolutely. What is, like I said, what's next from a very extreme Supreme Court that's not supposed to make these, it feels like a political decision.
Yeah.
Again, making decisions on behalf of women, birthing individuals who should have that choice to make that decision, not the members of the Supreme Court.
Yeah. It makes one think that, it is possible now. Roe versus Wade was the law of the land, as we talked about, for 50 years. Supreme Court comes in, it's reconfigured, and it says no, it's against the law. Then you could see in the future when the mix of conservatives and progressives changes proportion, that we could have some other law come up or some case come up where they would essentially reinstate Roe versus Wade. How does that play out in terms of respect and confidence in a Supreme Court? The law is supposed to be the law. It's okay to do it today. Tomorrow it's against the law, and in the future it'll be okay again. That upsets confidence and respect.
I would absolutely agree. How do you rely on the supreme law of the land? How do you rely on that if it's going to change? Also, Massachusetts, we've put these strong protections in place to protect our privacy. But what if Congress changes? What if Congress has majority of the Republican Party over the Democratic Party, and they put in federal abortion ban?
Yeah.
That then Massachusetts is not protected at that point.
Yeah. And let's delve into that a little bit. Right now, as we know, as you've explained, Massachusetts has codified Roe in its law, so people can come in here and have full availability of abortions and all of the reproductive rights care. States now other states are passing laws preventing abortion, but the decision against Roe versus Wade doesn't make a national. There's no federal law in effect.
No.
Correct. So what you're talking about is what if a federal law comes in place, which then codifies it at a federal level,
right?
And that would trump local law,
correct?
State law, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. And what's the possibility, do you think, of that happening?
I think women are outraged across this country. So I hope that reflects in the midterm elections for Congress this fall. I've never lived in states where, very, very conservative. I've always lived here in Massachusetts, so this is what I know. But Kansas is just a very good example of women who are outraged and showed it at the voting booth. And so I think that it'll be interesting to see what the midterms look like and really see the reflection of what this country is, state by state, is showing in terms of the reaction to this decision.
Yeah. Now, I made a note here. I'll have to put my glasses on to read this. But there is a federal law, Women's Health Protection Act, WHPA, that proposed a statutory right to abortion, and it was passed by the House in September of last year, but voted down in the Senate. Now, is that something that this is a law the other direction? This is codifying Roe right to abortion on a federal level. So you've got two competing, perhaps, pieces of legislature. One
Right.
that would ban it, and the other one that would. What do you think?
So the House, with the majority, passed this because they had the majority to be able to do that, to be able to again codify these privacy protections for abortion care, and the Senate turned it down because they didn't have that margin to be able to do it. Good for the House, and it'll be interesting to see again how the midterms change, what the makeup is of the House and Senate.
Yeah. Now, do you foresee a little bit of chaos here in the near future where women? I mean, is there a statistic about how many pregnant women there might be in the United States at any one particular time?
Well, that's a good question. I haven't looked that statistic up.
Here comes the overturn of Roe versus Wade, and there's these probably millions of women who are pregnant,
Right.
and a lot of them, for whatever reason, might want to avail themselves of an abortion. I mean, do you see a little bit of, is Massachusetts gearing up for an influx of women that want to get abortions here in the next,
We will be prepared. We have made a commitment to be prepared for anyone who's coming into this state for their reproductive care.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And
We won't turn anybody away.
Yeah, and the reproductive rights bill that you said that was passed 2 years ago and then reconfigured and signed by the governor in July. That now the monies for that's available. It's allocated. I know that Massachusetts has a surplus of in its budget, which is probably one of the few states that does.
So, there's a certain number of people in Massachusetts who still remain uninsured. It's about 200,000 people. I'd have to see where that divides up between men and women. So for our residents, we want to make sure that the care would be, you're insured, it's going to be covered by insurance. Do you have Medicaid? It'll be covered by Medicaid. Are you uninsured? We're going to find a way to be able to pay for that. So it's not like all abortions would be paid for out of a sum.
Right.
It would be
different buckets.
Insurance will be mandated to pay for it. And then for people coming in from other states, what do you have for insurance? What do you have for Medicaid if you're a Medicaid recipient? Our Medicaid, we do Mass Health here in Massachusetts. It's a pretty robust insurance, but I don't know what other states do. Some aren't as good as ours is.
Yeah.
But we will, for people coming in, what type of coverage do they have?
Right. Now you mentioned there's about 200,000 people in the state that don't have insurance. Now they're not available or can't take advantage of Mass Health, or who are these? Who
are they? For some reason there's some folks that could be slipping through the cracks. I just heard this stat just very recently, so I want to research it more. And that troubled me. I said because we're a state that's almost 100% insured.
Yeah.
Through our health connector. So who are they? So I still am researching that to see who these people are and that number. But that just came up recently in a forum that I heard someone recite. So I'd like to be able to research it myself.
Yeah. So technically, though, everybody in Massachusetts should be insurable, right? So is this just a matter of ignorance on the part of these people that these resources are available to them? Or they're in the more margins of society where they maybe...
we get these calls in the office for people who are trying to reinsure. We have a case right now of a gentleman who is having difficulty accessing Health Connector and getting all the right information in. They're a platform that you go in, password, et cetera. Not everybody has access to a computer.
Right, of course not.
So, how do we, and that segment of residents could fall into that as well. So continuing to research on who they are and how we can get them insured.
Yeah. Now, just getting back to now, you've been our state senator for this is what your fifth term?
It is.
Fifth term, and now there is a primary coming up in next month, right?
There is, September 6th.
September
It's a primary,
6th.
and actually there is ballot voting right now. People would have received an application to receive a mail-in ballot, and I know there's a lot of people that are voting right now.
Yeah, yeah. So you're going to be running for your sixth term.
I am. I
Yeah.
would like to be reelected and continue the work and continue representing the district.
Now, your district, there was a little bit of reconfiguration recently of Senate districts. So you used to have 5 cities and towns, right?
Correct.
Tell us what your representation district is now.
Okay, so right now it's still the 5, Beverly, Danvers, Peabody, Salem, and Topsfield. Senate districts and House districts are divided by population.
Population, right?
About 165,000 people
Per.
in a Senate district. So that means Topsfield has been redistricted out into another Senate district. Actually, Senator Tarr will be
Okay.
getting Topsfield and getting Topsfield back. He represented Topsfield 20 years ago.
Okay.
And so every 10 years, when we finish the census and see where population has moved, then we start to redraw the lines to make sure. And we want to be very conscious about not gerrymandering any districts, and also to make sure that we have, that they're accurately represented. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that's of course the way to do it is you should be sort of like the one person, one vote. So each senator, each representative has a district that is comparable in terms of size, number of
Correct.
constituents, so that everybody represents the same number. Not like our Senate where you have 60 or 70 million people in California that have 2 senators, and you have 60 million people out in the Plains states that have 14 or 18 senators.
Right.
And so California, 70 million people represented by 2, and these 70 million are represented by 14. But that's a discussion.
It's another discussion.
For
Or look at Rhode Island. Little tiny Rhode Island has 2 senators.
Yeah.
Every
Yeah.
state has 2.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I don't want to get too much into that, but I think that the state structure is an anachronism from colonial days, and that needs to be reconfigured because it just doesn't work on so many levels. Duplication of resources and of course political representation. It's just not.
I'll tell you right here from a lot of people who don't like the Electoral College.
Oh,
they like the national
Yeah.
popular vote.
National popular vote.
The
and
most votes wins, but that isn't necessarily always the way.
Well, on that note, Senator Lovely, thank you very much for coming into the studio. I'd like to remind our viewers that you've been watching the Beacon Hill Report with State Senator Joan Lovely. I'm your host, Walt Kosmowski, and we'll see you soon.